Every golf fan remembers the putt, the chip at Pebble Beach in 1982, the fist pump at Torrey Pines in 2008, the impossible par save at Augusta in 2005. You remember the player, you remember the shot, you remember the celebration. You probably don't remember the person standing 2 feet to the left, the one holding the bag, the one who spent 4 days walking every inch of that course, reading every green, whispering the right number at the right moment, and knowing, sometimes before the player did, exactly what needed to happen. The caddy. Golf has a mythology problem. It celebrates players. It builds statues of players. It names trophies after players. The people who help them win, they get 10% and a handshake. And then they go find another bag. Because the best caddy relationships in golf history aren't employer and employee. There's something harder to name than that. Let's start with the job description, because it's not what most people think. Yes, a caddy carries the bag. 14 clubs, a rain suit, a yardage book. On a hilly course over 4 rounds, that's 25 to 30 miles of walking with 30 to 40 pounds on their back. That's the easy part. A caddy reads greens from angles the player can't see. They track wind 2 holes ahead of where the group is standing. They know the course better than the greenskeeper by Thursday afternoon, where the ball will funnel, where the trouble is invisible from the fairway, where the pin the committee chose is a trap. They manage pace of play. They keep their player focused without making them tense. They know when to talk and, this is the harder skill, when to say absolutely nothing. And they manage something no stat captures: emotional temperature. A player walks off the 8th green having made double bogey. They're furious. There are 10 holes left and they're 2 back, not 10 back. A good caddy knows how to close that door. How to get the player to the 9th tee, thinking about the next shot rather than the last one. That's not on any yardage chart. That's the relationship. Former tour caddy Brennan Little, 25 years on the bag, put it simply: you're a psychologist, a strategist, and a course manager, all at the same time, for 4 days, in front of thousands of people. If you want to understand what a caddy relationship can be at its highest level, you start with Tiger Woods and Steve Williams. Williams caddied for Woods from 1999 to 2011. 13 major championships, more than 80 tournament wins worldwide, the most dominant run in modern golf. The way their partnership started tells you something. Tiger called Williams in 1999 about the job. Williams, half asleep and battling jet lag, thought it was a prank. He hung up. Tiger called back. Williams hung up again. Tiger tried a 3rd time. Williams described his role not as a bag carrier, but as an environment manager, blocking cameras at critical moments, reading the gallery to anticipate distractions, managing Tiger's pace so he stayed in the rhythm that suited his game. Fast, decisive, relentless. At the 2008 U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, Tiger was playing on a badly injured leg. Williams tried to talk him out of competing multiple times. Tiger's response was emphatic and unprintable. Tiger won in a playoff, then shut down for the rest of the year. When it ended in 2011, it wasn't clean. After 13 years, Tiger made the change with a statement on his website. Williams said, after 13 years of loyal service, needless to say, this came as a shock. There's a question that never fully gets asked. How much of what happened to Tiger afterward, the swing changes, the form losses, was about the leg, and how much was about losing the person who had managed his environment for a decade? Nobody knows. But the question is worth sitting with. If Tiger and Steve is the story of a partnership at its peak, then Tom Watson and Bruce Edwards is the story of what it means when a partnership becomes something you can't put a professional label on at all. Edwards started caddying for Watson in 1973. Watson was a young pro with no major wins yet. Edwards was 19 years old and had just turned down college to walk fairways for a living. His parents wanted him to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or a dentist. He chose the bag. Over the next 3 decades, Edwards was on Watson's bag for 8 major championships. He was there at Pebble Beach in 1982 when Watson chipped in at the 17th to beat Jack Nicklaus. Watson pointed directly at him after the ball dropped. That image, Watson's finger pointed, Edwards already celebrating, became one of the most replayed moments in U.S. Open history. The journalist John Feinstein, who knew Edwards for 22 years, described him as the Arnold Palmer of caddies, the first of a generation who chose the tour as a career rather than a stopgap. He took younger caddies under his wing. He knew everyone and everything in golf. In January 2003, Edwards was diagnosed with ALS Lou Gehrig's disease, a progressive and fatal condition that attacks the nerve cells controlling movement. He was 49 years old. Here's the detail that stops you cold. The diagnosis was delayed because Edwards didn't have health insurance. Like most caddies, he'd never had it. It was Watson who finally told him to go to the Mayo Clinic and told him to send the bill to him. That's the caddy economy in one sentence. One of the best in the world at his job. 30 years on the tour, no health insurance. Watson didn't step back. He restructured his schedule around keeping Edwards on the bag for as long as possible. At the 2003 U.S. Open at Olympia Fields, Edwards was already visibly ill. Walking was difficult. His speech was affected. Watson shot 65 in the first round and led the tournament. Edwards was right there. The image of them together that week dominated coverage in a way that had nothing to do with the leaderboard. They won one more tournament together, the tradition on the Champions Tour. When Watson holed the winning putt, they shared a long, emotional hug. Both of them understanding it was probably the last victory they'd share. Bruce Edwards died on April 8, 2004. The first day of the Masters. He was 49. Watson played that day with tears in his eyes for all 18 holes. Not boss and employee, closer than brothers. Their mutual friend Neil Oxman said, a friendship that lasted 30 years and ended only because one of them ran out of time. Here's the version of the caddy story nobody tells you at the trophy ceremony. The pay structure is called 5-7-10. 5% of winnings if the player makes the cut, 7% for a top 10, 10% for a win, plus a weekly stipend of $2,000 to $4,000 to cover travel, hotels, and expenses. For the right bag, those numbers are extraordinary. Ted Scott caddied for Scottie Scheffler in 2024. Scheffler won more than $55 million on tour. Scott took home an estimated $5 million. More than 22 PG Tour players earned competing that season. But here's the other side of that calculation. In 2024, caddy Brian Kopsick went public with his actual numbers. He caddied for Ben Silverman, a solid tour player, not a superstar. After expenses, Kopsick netted around $50,000 for a full year on the PGA Tour. And the part John Von Stade, CEO of the Caddies Network, put plainly, if your player misses the cut, there is no other source of money other than the weekly fee. Your player goes home Friday. You still paid for the flight. You still paid for 4 nights of hotel. No contract security. No guaranteed income. No health insurance as standard. The whole structure runs on your player performing. And if they don't, you absorb the loss. Here's what I think the caddy relationship actually is. It's not a job. Not at the level that matters. At the level that matters, Tiger and Steve, Tom and Bruce, it's a collaboration. One person makes the swing, the other person makes the swing possible. And the sport has never quite figured out what to do with that. The trophy, the green jacket, the fist pump on the 18th green. It's all built around one person. The player, the caddy, gets 10% and a handshake. Bruce Edwards got a diagnosis he couldn't afford to investigate, and a friend who told him to send the bill somewhere else. That's not the sport taking care of its own. That's one human being taking care of another one, and the sport having nothing to do with it. The 5-7-10 system works when the bag is the right bag. Ted Scott proved that in 2024. But the system has no floor, no protection for the caddy who spent years building a partnership with a player who then decides it's time for a change. You give your professional life to someone else's career, and when they're done with you, you're done. Golf is played by the player, but it's won by the partnership. The sport has just never been honest enough to put that on the trophy. If this is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. New videos every Saturday. Dig deeper.